The sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Carter Memorial Library, turning the polished marble floor into a sheet of gold. I could see my reflection in it, silk blouse crisp, heels clicking softly as I walked toward the entrance where a bronze plaque gleamed with freshly engraved letters. My name, right there. Permanent. I had smiled at enough ribbon-cutting ceremonies to know how to hide the rush of emotions underneath a calm, professional exterior. To everyone else in the room, university board members, reporters, even a senator, I was the composed benefactor. But under the practiced smile, my heart was pounding with a cocktail of pride, disbelief, and something sharper. Bitterness. Because somewhere in the crowd, I knew my parents were standing. They hadn't spoken to me in almost 8 years. Not since the night they told me I was dreaming too big and wasting my time thinking I could ever afford college. And now here they were, invited not by me, but by the university's president, watching as I prepared to speak. My phone buzzed in my clutch. A text from an unknown number. Proud of you, Emily. We were wrong. I stared at the screen, my fingers tightening around the phone. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing in on me. The cameras were ready. The audience was waiting. And the past? The past had just walked back into my life. I was 18 when the words hit me like a slap I never saw coming. We were in the cramped kitchen of our 2-bedroom home in Dayton, Ohio. The walls were faded yellow, the kind of yellow that couldn't decide if it was cheerful or just tired. My acceptance letter from Columbia University sat in the center of the table, its navy blue crest staring up at me like a dream come to life. You can't afford this, my father said flatly, pushing the letter back toward me as if it were a bad bill. I got a scholarship, I argued, my voice trembling. It covers tuition. I just need to figure out housing and books. I can work. My mother cut in, her tone sharper than the knife she was using to slice apples. Work? In New York City? You'll drown in debt before you graduate. And for what? An English degree? You think that's going to put food on the table? The lump in my throat grew so big, I thought I might choke on it. My fingers curled into my palms until my nails dug crescents into the skin. I'll make it work, I said, but it came out barely louder than a whisper. You're dreaming too big, Emily, my father said, his voice final, like the clang of a closing door. That night, I packed a duffel bag. I didn't have much, just clothes, a second-hand laptop, and a leather-bound journal my high school English teacher, Mrs. Harper, had given me on graduation day. Inside the cover, she had written in her looping cursive, "The world will tell you no. You write your own yes." I clutched that journal like it was a lifeline as I boarded a Greyhound bus at midnight. It was raining. The glass was streaked with water, turning the streetlights into golden smears. My heart was breaking, but there was a flicker of something else in my chest, determination. If they couldn't see my future, I'd just have to make it bright enough to blind them. New York City didn't welcome me, it tested me. My first apartment was a basement room in Queens with a mattress on the floor, a window that looked straight into a brick wall, and a radiator that hissed like it was personally offended I was there. The scholarship covered tuition, but rent, books, and food were my battles alone. I worked the morning shift at a coffee shop on Amsterdam Avenue, classes during the day, then shelving books at the university library until midnight. My fingers were often stained with espresso grounds and paper dust, and my feet ached so badly at night that I'd press them against the cold wall just to feel something other than pain. But in between all that, I found my people. Professor Margaret Sloan was the first to really see me. She was in her 60s, with silver hair she wore in a perfect chignon and a voice that could silence an entire lecture hall without rising above a whisper. After reading my first essay, she stopped me after class. "You have a mind that doesn't just absorb, it questions. Don't waste it." Those words stuck. She introduced me to a research assistant position that paid better than the coffee shop and eventually connected me with a small publishing firm looking for interns. I started editing manuscripts on weekends, the kind of work that made the rest of the world fade away. My wins were small at first. The first scholarship renewal. The first essay published in an academic journal. The first check from a client who said my editing made their work shine. But the biggest win came after graduation. I landed a junior editor role at a major publishing house. The pay was modest, but the door it opened? Massive. I worked like someone was constantly trying to take it away from me. Promotions came, and with them, bigger projects. I became known for spotting raw talent in unheard voices, and soon, I was running my own imprint. When my first author hit the bestseller list, the royalty cut was enough for me to finally exhale. Still, I kept my success quiet from my parents. My social media was a carefully curated trickle of generic city photos, never hinting at the meetings in glass-walled boardrooms or the nights I spent in black gowns at literary award galas. Not because I wanted to hide forever, but because I wanted the reveal to mean something. Years passed. My net worth grew. When Columbia's development office called about funding a new library wing, I didn't just say yes, I gave them my one condition. It had to bear my name. And the day they unveiled the plaque, I knew the story I'd been writing since that rainy bus ride was about to reach its most satisfying chapter. The auditorium was buzzing as guests filed in for the unveiling ceremony. The library's new east wing shimmered under the midday sun, its glass facade reflecting the sky like an unbroken lake. I stood backstage, the click of my heels muffled by the thick carpet. A student volunteer adjusted the microphone height for the speaker before me. My turn was next. I scanned the crowd through the narrow curtain gap. There they were, my parents sitting in the third row. My father in a Sunday suit, my mother in a dress I didn't recognize. Their posture was stiff, eyes darting around as if trying to piece together why they were really here. The university president took the podium first. We are gathered today to honor an alumna whose contributions to education and literature have transformed not just our campus, but the way we think about knowledge itself. Please join me in welcoming Emily Carter. Applause rose as I stepped onto the stage, every spotlight in the room finding me. My smile was calm, measured. Inside, my pulse thudded like a drum. Thank you, President Hughes. I began, my voice steady. It's strange, standing here in the very place I once walked as a student, juggling 3 jobs, wondering if I'd even make it through. Back then, I couldn't afford my textbooks without skipping meals. I couldn't imagine a day when I'd have enough, not just for myself, but to give back. I paused, letting my gaze drift deliberately to my parents. But I learned something. The world will tell you no. Sometimes, the people closest to you will tell you no. And if you listen too long, you'll start believing them. I didn't. I stepped aside and gestured toward the covered plaque. A student pulled the velvet cloth away, revealing the gleaming bronze letter. The crowd applauded again. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father's face froze in something between disbelief and recognition. This library wing is for every student who's ever been told their dream was too expensive, too impractical, too far away. I continued. It's for the kid in the basement apartment, the one working the early shift and the night shift, still somehow finding time to turn the page. I closed my speech with a thank you to the faculty and donors, then stepped down into the mingling crowd. Cameras flashed, hands shook mine, but my eyes stayed locked on my parents. They approached slowly. My mother spoke first, her voice shaking. Emily, we didn't know. I let the silence hang for a beat before answering. You didn't want to know. My father cleared his throat. We were wrong. About everything. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the girl standing in that yellow kitchen being told to lower her sights. I felt like the woman who owned her place in the world. I looked between them, measuring my words. Welcome to my library. We found a quiet alcove off the main lobby, the kind with high-backed leather chairs and sunlight pooling across the carpet. My parents sat across from me, still processing everything they'd just seen. It was the first time in years I felt no need to fill the silence for them. I let it stretch, because this time I held the power. My mother finally spoke. We should have believed in you. I folded my hands in my lap. Yes, you should have. But you didn't. And that's why we're here, because I want you to understand something before we move forward. My father shifted in his chair, his brow furrowing. Move forward. Yes, I said. If we're going to have a relationship again, there are conditions. They exchanged a glance, the kind they used to give me when they thought I was being stubborn. "First," I said, my tone even, "you stop telling people what they can't do. You don't get to shrink someone's dreams to fit your idea of what's realistic. Not with me. Not with anyone." My mother's lips pressed together, but she nodded faintly. "Second, you support without strings. That means when you say you're proud, it's not followed by a suggestion of what I should be doing instead." My father leaned back, exhaling slowly. "And third," I continued, "you own the fact that you were wrong, not just with words today, but with how you treat me from this moment on. No rewriting history to make it sound like you always knew I'd succeed." They both looked down, their hands resting in their laps like school children in the principal's office. "This isn't about revenge," I added softly. "It's about respect. You don't have to understand every decision I make, but you do have to respect that they're mine to make." My father finally met my eyes. "We can do that." "I hope so," I said, standing. "Because if you can, then I want you in my life. I want you at my book launches, at my speaking events. I want you to see what I've built. But I won't invite anyone back in if it means losing the peace I've fought for." They rose too, and for the first time in nearly a decade, my mother stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me. It wasn't the embrace I'd once longed for. It was something new. Tentative. Honest. And that was enough for now. In the weeks that followed, something shifted. My parents began calling not every day, but enough to surprise me. The conversations were different now. They asked questions without rushing to offer an opinion. My mother even sent me a photo of herself at the local library, checking out a stack of novels. "Thought of you," her text read. The first real test came when I told them I was funding a scholarship program for first-generation college students. My father didn't question the decision, didn't warn me about wasting money. He just said, "Those kids are lucky to have you." One Saturday, I walked through the Carter Memorial Library alone. The event was over, the crowd gone. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, dust motes drifting in the warm air. I paused at the bronze plaque, running my fingers over my name. In my bag, I still carried Mrs. Harper's leather-bound journal. It had been with me in that cramped Queens basement, on the subway rides to work, in every office I'd ever occupied. Now, it sat open on a display shelf in my private reading room at the library, under a glass case. The inscription stared back at me. "The world will tell you no. You write your own yes." I smiled. This place wasn't just a building. It was proof that a girl with nothing but grit, caffeine, and borrowed time could rewrite her story. Proof that the past doesn't have the final word unless you hand it the pen. And as I turned to leave, heels clicking against the marble, I thought of the one line I wanted every student who walked through these doors to remember. "I am living proof that the only limits that matter are the ones you let stand."